Are you ready to explore soul-centered sustainable living in today's reality? I'm Leslie Rangel, an Emmy-nominated Latina TV journalist turned emotional health and spiritual movement coach. Join me on The News Yogi, where we'll have conversations celebrating authenticity in a world that demands perfect curation. So come as you are, familia, not who you're expected to be. New episodes every Monday on your favorite platform. Hey y'all, welcome to this week's episode of the News Yogi podcast. It is Voice Notes with Leslie Week, and I'm so excited to dive a little bit more into the conversation I had last week with Wendy Amara that really talks about the courage to speak up, but also to stay regulated. And I want to offer a little additional nugget into that. Maybe for some of us, it's not the courage to speak up, but really it's the courage to stay informed, especially right now. This weekend, I found myself doom scrolling right after work on Thursday or Friday. I can't even remember what day it was, but I was just scrolling image after horrible, heart-wrenching image. I was seeing the images of the children in Gaza who are starving. I was seeing images of children here in the United States whose parents have been deported. I was seeing just more investigations that have revealed new horrific information from the flooding situation that happened in Texas, and how many things have really fallen through the cracks. And as I was scrolling, I was just like, I want to keep looking because I want to stay informed. I don't want to turn my eye to the atrocities that are happening. And at the same time, I'm feeling more and more anxiety as I'm continuously scrolling. And I felt really quite overwhelmed. And so we're going to talk about that this week. It's not about checking out. It's really checking in. And this week is really all about checking in and building the capacity to really help ourselves stay informed, especially right now with so much breaking news, but at the same time, not losing ourselves as just basic humans as we are consuming this news. And that's really the framework with which I want to continue our conversations here. I've been sitting a lot with what the point really is of this podcast and why I wanted to do it and why I wanted to start this podcast. I started this podcast because I wanted to talk about how do we move in this world, in this earth, in these current times where you hear everywhere, it's unprecedented. This is unprecedented. And it's like, well, I feel like we keep saying it's so unprecedented that really these are precedented times. This is our reality. And I wanted this space to be able to talk about how do we stay informed without falling apart, and what are the ways in which we can do that? How do we not check out and turn a blind eye and pretend that everything is roses and rainbows and sunshines when our world is hurting, when our society feels like it's crumbling beneath us, when we walk outside and we don't recognize the world we live in. And so that's really the framework and the direction in which I'm continuously leaning in towards, and really thinking about what is journalism for the nervous system, and how can we consume and stay informed with all of these headlines in a way that also holds space for our reality as just basic humans who are experiencing collective trauma as a community, as a society, as a country, as a world, and all of the things that we're seeing around us. So again, if you're like me, it can feel dysregulating scrolling all of these social medias, whether it's Blue Sky or Instagram or whatever it might be. It can feel dysregulating because it is dysregulating. Our bodies were not meant to see so many traumatic images, traumatic information, hearing things, watching videos. Our body was not meant to see that level of trauma so easily in the palm of our hand. And you've got these algorithms that elevate some of these things because the images are continuously drawing in audiences, and they're consuming and they're interacting. And so the algorithm is recognizing this as, oh, we should keep pushing out more of this. And then, the other aspect is, again, seeing these graphic images. And it's important that we recognize that, especially for those of us who live with CPTSD or have gone through different types of trauma in our lives, it impacts us in a different way, especially when we have lived through these type of instabilities. Even just reading about violence can absolutely re-trigger us, especially if we're still in a healing journey, or maybe folks have not quite started that healing journey, or whatever situation you might find in. So it's important to recognize and understand why this is so dysregulating to our nervous system. Now, some of the things that I talked about with Wendy were absolutely things that I've been talking about with my friends. Same thing. I saw some friends this weekend and we were talking about my podcast and how it's launching. And she said, Leslie, as a mom, I've been scrolling these images and it gives me anxiety because I look over and I see my son who's asking for a slice of pizza. And then I'm on social media and I can see the ribs on a child and wondering, what could I even do? And so last week when I talked with Wendy and our conversation, she spoke about how it was really challenging for her in her journey to speak about the injustices that were happening in the world. If you have not gotten a chance to go back and listen to Wendy and I's conversation, I would highly recommend it. Wendy is a life and mindset coach, and she is also a content creator, and she also now calls herself an activist. She has joined an organization in Los Angeles called Roots and Wings, and what they do is they uplift and do storytelling of situations that are happening on the ground in Los Angeles, specifically right now with immigration raids. And so she talked about her trajectory being in the coaching world and having this mindset of, I have to stay neutral. I can't really talk about my politics. I can be covert in who I am and in the way I move around in this world, but I can't be overt in outwardly speaking up. And so she talked about how her journey has really shifted from appearing to remain neutral to now she is constantly sharing stories. Again, she calls herself an activist. And, one of the things that she talked about was that she understands that some folks do not have the capacity to speak up about some of the things that are ongoing, or let's even take that a step back. It's not necessarily speaking up. It's more speaking up on social media because, let's be honest, that's the reality in which we live in. We find out things through social media. You found out someone broke up. You found out someone's having a baby. You found out Beyonce brought Destiny's Child onto the stage along with Shabuzi and Jay-Z and you weren't there. We find out about so many things through social media. And so Wendy herself said that she found herself questioning really close friends and asking them, why aren't you speaking out about some of these injustices that we're seeing in the world? And when she got more curious about that, she started to hear other perspectives and see other perspectives and understand why folks may or may not have chosen to speak out on social media. But one of the things that she said was, if social media is not the thing for you, you get to make that choice. You're in control of that. There are other ways to certainly speak up, and there are other ways to certainly make your voice heard. And just like I said at the beginning of this podcast, this episode, I want to offer a little other nugget in there. And there are many ways to stay informed. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you are not staying informed because you're not consuming information through Instagram or whatever it might be. There are different modalities in which you can stay informed, not be ignorant to what's happening in the world around us, but also do it in a way that you can take care of yourself. I have a few strategies myself because, I think back to the reason why I started this podcast, and it was because I myself was in burnout, and I felt like we weren't talking about the impact that all of the news media diet that we all have is really impacting us. And so I wanted a space to be able to talk about, how do you do this again in a sustainable way? How do you do journalism in a way that is calming for your nervous system? And a few years ago, I didn't even dare say that because people would be like, journalism for the nervous system? Yeah, right. I mean, I would hear these things like, and without going down a whole diversion on that, again, thinking back to what are the ways in which we can stay informed, but in a way that takes into account our capacity. One thing that I do, especially right now as a working journalist and just as someone who gives a damn, is hey familia, are you taking notes? I sure hope so. Okay, so a quick pause to ask a huge favor. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast and YouTube channel. It ensures you don't miss any episodes and gets this content in front of more people. So please just take a second, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate your support. All right, now let's jump back into the conversation. I pick three topics that I'm covering as a journalist, but also three topics that are important to me. There's no way for me right now that I feel that I can be informed on every single little thing that is happening in the world around us. So for me, I pick three topics, and those three topics are the three topics that I sort of have become a mini expert in and that help inform my reporting, but also help inform the way I move around in the world. So that might be a tactic that you can use in order to stay informed. Wendy talked a little bit about this in terms of the activism side of things. Pick three things that you feel you could do when you are wanting to speak up or help out a cause or whatever that might be. She said, donate money to a local organization or volunteer in help packing school supplies now that that's coming up. I advise you to go back and listen to that episode because she just gave so many great gems that I can't possibly sum up in this little voice note episode for y'all. But in the same way, you can pick three topics to stay informed about. Pick three things that you feel you can tangibly do. I try to give myself a time frame in which I'm consuming news. In the mornings, try to give myself the first 10 to 15 minutes that I'm waking up. I am not consuming news. I am not looking through the latest push notifications that happened. I'm waking up. I'm taking a breath. I'm saying an affirmation to myself. Today's going to be a good day, or you were stronger today than you were yesterday. Whatever affirmation resonates with you. And I let myself just feel that. I let myself be present and know news headlines for the first 15 to 20 minutes is something that I do. And then I'm still working on it, but one of the things that I want to start trying to commit to is not consuming those really heavy stories right before bed. That is another thing that I was starting to see and feel myself really go down that path of, oh, now I'm doom scrolling right before bed. I've mentioned it in another episode, but I have friends who choose to put their phone in other rooms. I'm not quite there yet, but those are just little tips and tricks. Another one, especially when some weeks are heavier than others, I check in with myself. If I know that I'm going to open Instagram, I may get a barrage of who knows what kind of news has happened that half hour. And so I check in, like, do I have the capacity? How am I feeling? How's my body feeling in this moment? Is this a good idea to open up this app right now? Or should I save this for later? I read an email earlier, and I have all my inboxes come in together. If not, I'll miss emails. But I read an email earlier and I knew it was work related. And it's still bugging me, which is why I bring it up. I'm like, I want to open that email. I want to open the email. But I'm like, no, let's not open the email, Leslie. Let's wait until Monday when we have capacity, when we're on the clock. Let's focus on being present. And then again, just checking in with being present. This weekend for me was really themed around family. My husband is part of a fraternity, and his fraternity brothers and their wives, they really feel like family to us. And so this weekend, we spent some time with them, just being in community, chit-chatting, catching up, hearing about their latest travels, hearing about the latest thing that they're doing, the latest hobby they've picked up. We got invited to a jazz performance. We got to catch up with some of our friends' kids and hear about the little things that they're now starting to do in terms of how they're growing up. And another big thing for me was my mom was in town. I hadn't connected with my mom in a few weeks just because we've been busy, and we've been calling each other on the phone, but we have not gotten to physically see each other and physically hold and hug each other and just be in each other's presence in a little bit. And it was so grounding to be able to have her here. She actually helped me repot this plant over here. We had such a blast repotting that one, and this one's new too. And we were just laughing, and our hands were dirty from the dirt, and we were cackling, and I'm sure the neighbors were hearing us and probably laughing with us or at us too. But it was just so nice feeling grounded and just being present in the moment, not having to reach for my phone to see what was the latest that happened on social media, and really just taking some time to be present and stay present. And all of this, again, just as a reminder that especially in times like right now, it takes courage to stay informed and to not shut your eyes to what's happening around us. That takes courage. And so I want to just recognize that for a moment. It takes courage to stay informed. It takes courage to speak up, because it would be so easy for folks to turn an eye. And trust me, there are people out there who are absolutely doing that. And the fact that you are here and listening and looking for ways to stay informed, if that resonates with you, to speak up, if that resonates with you, that is so beautiful. It's so beautiful, because what's at the end of that? What's your reasoning for wanting to stay informed? What's your reasoning for wanting to speak out about the injustices we're seeing in the world? So a reminder and also a reflection that it's important. It's important. And I just want to close out with this. And I wrote it down because it's important, especially in this world. Sometimes we've been taught that if we're not suffering, we're not doing enough. I'm going to say that again. We've been taught that if we're not suffering, we're not doing enough. But keep this clear. Rest is resistance. Rest is not betrayal. It's how we build the capacity to keep on caring, to keep on showing up, to keep on speaking up if that's something that resonates with you. It builds the capacity to ask your friends to bring up uncomfortable conversations about a variety of topics that we're facing in our world. And it's okay to let go for just a little bit. Let go with purpose, and then come back in whenever there is capacity. So a little check-in with your jaw. Notice if it's clenched. Soften your brows. Relax your shoulders. Take a deep breath here, and just a little check-in. That took less than 30 seconds. Check in. How are my brows? How's my jaw? How's my shoulders? Try that daily. And remember that you're allowed to care from a place of healing. You're allowed to care from a place that's well rested. The world is still hurting. Take a break, put your oxygen mask on first, and come back when it feels like you have capacity. So next week, as we've been going on this little pattern, I'm going to have a little bit more of an intentional, longer meditation for you that you can come back to and really be able to sit with and maybe close your eyes and take some time for yourself. So that'll come next week in our meditation and practice episodes. And then I also want to leave you with a little shout out to a friend of mine. Her name is Ashlyn. I met her at a journalism conference this summer in New Orleans, but she has a platform called Ask Ashlyn, AskAshlyn. She's a journalist, and her business is news for the news avoiders. And so she has some platforms. I believe it's on WhatsApp or one of the Patreons, one of those where you are a subscriber and then she'll text you the news and she'll give you a little bit of a warning like, hey, this is what's coming up. Check this out. And here's some ways you can stay informed. And I just thought that was a really neat project that she's doing. We're working together to see if we can team up to bring you a podcast episode and talk a little bit more on how to move in this world in an informed way, but in a way that is also nurturing for your nervous system. So a little shout out to Ashlyn and a little check-in to let yourself breathe. Let yourself breathe. It's okay to unplug. It's okay to disconnect and come back at your capacity. And check out that episode with Wendy Amara. She also gave some great nuggets for folks who are looking to get a little bit more plugged in or looking for alternative ways to get plugged in. But we're going to cap it right there. And I'll see you next time on The News Yogi. Thank you for listening to this entire episode. For that, my heart is filled with gratitude. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Spread the word to your friends and fam, whoever may be interested in this topic. This space is for you, familia. If you know someone who'd be a perfect guest, yes, including you, or you have a topic you'd like to see covered in future episodes, visit thenewsyogi.com/podcast. See you next week on The News Yogi.